hopefully you've seen part one, and what I have to do now is unsolder these 3 wires and then undo the nuts over here so that I can remove the tone arm. So we'll start with the wires. Definitely taking a bit longer than I thought it would. There's one. That took long enough. I'm going to go ahead and do the second and third one on my own. I think you get the idea. The wires have been removed. Now to undo the nut over here. We'll just put this together so we don't lose it. Now this should just slip through. Something else must be holding it in. All right, let me take a closer look here, see what's hanging this up. The connection here between the tone arm and this part is very, very tight. What I ended up doing, which seems to be working, is I'm tapping the tone arm down, being careful not to hit the wires. And it's moved a little bit. It really should come out. Well, I'll continue to tap it more on my own because I got to go nice and slow with it. I think I just about have it. Here we go. All right, let's see what we're at here now. What I have to do next is I want to remove the motor so I can access where the motor mounts go. And to do that, I have to remove this plate. As I mentioned earlier, 4 screws hold it in. 1, 2, 3. Where's the 4th one over here, it looks like. Or is it 3? 1, 2, maybe just 3. Anyway, one thing that I mentioned earlier, I have the schematics for this, and it turns out those schematics is for the next model up from this one, where they made some improvements and some changes. And what I thought were detailed directions on how to take it apart really is just detailed information on how lever A pushes against spring B, which moves tab C, which makes the tone arm move. It just sort of explains how it works, not how to take it apart. So from this point forward, I'm pretty much on my own, because the videos that I was able to check out, all that it showed was how to remove a tone arm and how to remove the idler wheel, which is my main goal of removing this. I want to get the idler wheel off and the motor mounts. So let me start to undo these screws. I'm going to take a closer look at the whole thing just to see if there's any hidden parts that I need to be aware of. So give me a little bit of time for that. as best as I can tell, I think this is just going to come right out once I've removed these 3 screws. And they come with a washer. Is 1. 2. And 3. All right, as expected, I got it. And now the idler wheel comes off nice and easy, huh? Look at that. And as far as the motor, these 3 nuts here, I have to undo. Let's see, I think I can move this aside. That's a larger nut. I have to pick out a different size ratchet here. There's 2. And here you can see what's left of one of the motor mounts. It's just a hard plastic. I assume it was rubber at one point. So I need 3 motor mounts. And I think the motor should come out of here now. And it looks like the motor mount, maybe it's I don't know if this is one piece or there's one part underneath the plate and one part above it, but when I order them, I'll see what I end up getting. Anyway, this I have my 3 nuts, my 3 washers. Here's sort of a brass sleeve and a washer under that. It's 2 separate pieces. What's left here is almost like a melted or a broken up motor mount. And the 3rd one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll look to clean this up more. I see a lot of dirt areas I couldn't get to. I'm also going to look to order an idler wheel, 3 motor mounts, and I need a new cartridge. I have to get a new one of these. So let me work on that, and once I get my parts and get everything cleaned up, probably lubricate it wherever I can think it needs it, then I'll look to start putting it back together. One other thing that I wanted to do was to remove this cover so I'm able to solder a new power cord onto it. And in looking at it, it appears that there's a sort of a metal clip going around the wire. I think if I pop that out, I might be able to slide this off. So I'll work on that on my own, and I'll let you know if I get lucky. So I got my work cut out for me here. What I've done is I removed the switch from the plate, and I was not able to remove this cover, which means I'm not going to be able to resolder a new power cord to it. However, I wasn't really happy with how I had wrapped this with electrical tape, because when it was in position here, I really couldn't get around it. So I removed the tape I put on it, and then I kind of stripped away what was left of that crumbled insulation. Now I just have two cloth covered wires here, and I braided them together, sort of twisted them together. And my plan is to now cover this in a much better fashion with electrical tape. And when I go to attach a new power cord, I'll use heat shrink tubing to connect the cord to this. So I think it'll be relatively safe to use as it is. In the meantime, I'm going to be waiting for my parts to arrive. What's interesting is that the company I get them from, they're called VM Audio Enthusiasts. It turns out I have to send back to them the old idler wheel, because these are not made anymore, and they will take measurements off of it, maintain the, I guess, the metal center portion which fits over the spindle, and they're going to make a new idler wheel for me. So until I get all those parts from them, there's not much else for me to do here. What I've decided to do, instead of wrapping this with electrical tape, I'm going to put some heat shrink tubing over the whole length of it. I slipped one piece this far, and I cut a shorter one and I'll add an extra piece here once this is connected to the new power cord. But what I have to do is just hit this with my hot air gun, which makes a lot of noise and takes a bit of time, but I'll show you how you do it, and then I'll finish it up on my own. But here you can see already it started to shrink, this small piece here. Anyway, I'm going to work on the whole thing on my own, and I should be good with that, and then I'll just be waiting for the parts to arrive. I just want to show you the finished product here. That's not going to go anywhere now with this wire. And the next step will be to work on the reassembly. Well, it's been about a week and a half, but the parts arrived today. So let's open it up and see what they sent me. Okay, we have their business card. And we have, this is the ceramic cartridge, a lot of little parts in there. Here's the idler wheel, which looks pretty good. And lastly, we should have the motor mounts. Okay, I also have what appears to be instructions on how to mount the cartridge to the tone arm. So let me take a look at this so I understand how I'm supposed to do it, and then I'll get started. I'll probably look to reattach the motor with the motor mounts and the idler wheel first, and then we'll work on the tone arm. So the motor mounts go here, here, and here. I've already slipped this one in. Have to sort of tuck it into the hole and work it all around. There's a slot. So half the motor mount is on this side of the plate, and other part of it shows through over here. There's two. Okay, next, the motor on these screws here I have to seat these 3 washers. And this will fit through here. And these little sleeves go over the screws. Oop. And lastly, I have 3 washers. And 3 nuts. That's too small. That's the one. Okay, let's see how this looks. That looks pretty good. What I'm going to have to do, I think, though, is place this switch back into position here. Let me get the wrench to unscrew that. Okay. Well, this is playing a little hard to get, isn't it? All right, let me do this on my own. I don't want to waste a lot of time having you watch me struggle with it. Well, that was surprisingly difficult, but I got it. Next, I'm going to seat the idler wheel. That looks like it's going to work fine. This I have to secure with a couple of those little C-clips. Let me place those. Actually, it's just one clip. Okay, that's in. I'm trying to recall the order that I took it apart. I think what I have to do next is place this back into the base. So let me move this out of the way So I can do that. Once this is back in here, I think then I'll be working on the tone arm. So let me make some room here. I've positioned it in the base and need to secure it with the 3 screws, but I think what I'm going to do first is remove the switch and lift it up and out, because I think now is a good time to attach the new power cord. I have to use my hot air gun on it, and I think it'll be better if I'm blowing hot air outside the case rather than into all of these wirings that are here. So let me get set up to do that. I've removed the switch. I'm not going to show how I add the power cord to it, but I'll be tinning the ends of the wire with some solder, sliding the heat shrink tubing over the connection, and then hitting it with the hot air gun. So I'll do that on my own. The wire's connected. I ended up using a piece of electrical tape just to hold the wires together. There's a bit of a gap. So this is pretty solid. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Next, I'm going to reposition this back into the base. I'll secure it with my 3 screws. I'm also going to reattach the switch over here. Let me do all that, and then I'll be ready to work on the tone arm. I've attached what they call the sub-base assembly back into the case, and I have it plugged in. I figure let me turn it on and see how it runs. Let me just seat the on-off switch. And there you go, it's running. And the way this will work, the idler wheel, which moves away from here a little bit, it fits between the base and the inner rim of the platter. And that's what's going to make this rotate. So what I want to work on next is the tone arm and the new cartridge. And what I have to do is, there's a couple of screws here. I have to undo, get the cartridge out, pull off these 2 contacts. With the new one, I place it in a piece of foam rubber to cushion it. I have the 2 pins on the end of this, and what came with the kit are a couple of smaller contact connectors that are going to slip over here, and they seem to be smaller. These pins are smaller than the ones on this cartridge, so I'm going to have to solder these to the wire here and then hook everything up. So let me start working on all that. I'll show some of it if I can, but it'll take quite a while, and I don't want to waste too much time with that, but let me get working on it. Let me show one interesting thing. I took the 2 screws out that hold the cartridge in, and part of the directions states that there's a black wire connected here. I know that that's the ground, and it says that I don't have to use that wire, and I'm assuming it's because this cartridge is in a metal shell, whereas the new one is all plastic. So I guess plastic doesn't need to be grounded. Anyway, this now can be lifted up out of here. I just have to now remove these connectors from it. Let me work on that. I don't have enough slack in the wire here to play with this. I have to try to remove this sort of a clip with a couple of, looks like, thick washers. Okay. I don't know if the purpose of these is to hold this wire in place, or perhaps acts as a weight, like a counterbalance, so the tone arm has enough pressure when it's up, you know, going through the record groove. All right, now I can free this up, and I'll have room to work on it. So let me continue trying to get the clips off of the cartridge there. Well, I was able to get everything attached properly. The cartridge is mounted to the tone arm. I soldered the wires to the contacts and slipped them over the tips that were coming out of the cartridge. However, I ran into one problem, and that is the size of this cartridge really doesn't match the original. And if I line this up where it got screwed in, you can see how the pins on the old cartridge extend further back than the new one. As a result, this wire wasn't long enough to reach here. So what I ended up having to do was unbraid it. If you look back, you'll see that it was all twisted. It was braided together. And by doing that, I got more length out of the wire and was able to reach the cartridge. It's pretty snug, but there is some play. However, it wasn't long enough now for me to tuck it underneath these little washers here. So I put them on anyway, just in case they're supposed to act as a weight for the tone arm. But I do plan to get in touch with VM audio enthusiasts to say, I don't really think the replacement cartridge is quite the same size as, you know, the original. Anyway, I'm still going to proceed, and I believe the next step is going to be to reinstall the tone arm. I put some cushioning over this stylus so I don't damage it as I'm handling the tone arm. I have to slip the wires back down through here. The next step is I have to reposition this little bracket that locked onto the tone arm, and it went this way. What I have to do next is slip this all the way down and then secure it with the screw and the nut here. That'll take a few minutes. I'll do it on my own because it's a very tight fit and it'll take a bit of effort to get it into the proper position. Everything's back together. And tight. So when I move the tone arm, looks like it's moving the way it was before. Now I have to reconnect these wires. I have to solder them to the 3 contacts here, and that's something else that I'll be doing on my own. Okay, the wires have been soldered back into position, and I think this is a good spot to end part 2.